It was another lonely day on the strange planet. Mark had been stranded here for months. Ever since his ship crashed in the middle of nowhere. The planet was beautiful in a way, with its wide green fields, towering mountains, and vast oceans. But it was also dangerous. The creatures here were not like anything he'd seen on Earth, and the weather could change without warning. Mark had gotten used to the isolation. He had learned how to find food, build shelters, and survive. But every day, he missed home more. He missed his family, his friends, and the sound of the city. The silence here was overwhelming, and there was no one to talk to. That's when he saw something unusual. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange light appeared in the sky. It wasn't like the usual falling stars or passing ships. This light was bright and steady, moving slowly through the air. Mark had no idea what it was, but it was headed straight toward him, curious and cautious. He grabbed his weapon, a makeshift spear, and walked toward the light. His heart raced, unsure if he was about to face danger or something completely different. The light grew brighter as it approached, and he could feel the ground beneath his feet tremble slightly. It landed softly on a clearing just ahead. As the light dimmed, Mark saw a ship, not like anything he had ever seen before. It was sleek, smooth, and shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The ship's surface seemed to ripple like liquid, and Mark felt a strange pull toward it, as though the ship itself wanted him to come closer. Before he could take another step, the ship's hatch opened, and a figure emerged. She was tall, taller than most humans, with skin that shimmered in the fading light. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, a brilliant shade of violet. Mark froze, unsure of what to do or say. She was no human. Her features were delicate, but her presence was powerful. Despite her alien appearance, she didn't look threatening. In fact, she seemed peaceful. "Hello," Mark said, his voice shaking slightly. Who are you?" The alien woman smiled, a warm and gentle smile that immediately put him at ease. "I am Lyra," she said in perfect English, though Mark knew she couldn't have learned it from anyone on Earth. "I've come to be your companion." Mark blinked, unsure if he heard her right. "Your companion?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, my people sent me to assist you. I am here to help you survive and learn from you." Mark took a step back, his mind racing. This was impossible. How did an alien know about him? Why would she want to help him? "I don't understand," he muttered. "Why would you want to help me?" Lyra's smile softened. "My people have observed humans for many years. We have studied your culture, your emotions, and your ability to adapt. We believe that you have much to teach us." Mark stood still, processing her words. This was too much to take in at once. His first thought was that she must be lying, or perhaps there was some kind of trick. But looking into her eyes, he saw no deceit. She wasn't hiding anything. "How do you know I need help?" Mark asked, his voice still shaky. Lyra's expression became thoughtful. "I can see that you are alone, and you have been alone for a long time. Your body tells me you have learned to survive, but your heart, it tells me that you are lonely. My people understand loneliness." Mark didn't know how to respond. He had never thought of his loneliness in that way, but she was right. The isolation had begun to eat away at him, and he longed for connection, even if it was with someone so different from him. "So, you're here to keep me company?" Mark asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Lyra nodded. "Yes. I was chosen for this mission because I have the ability to connect with others, especially humans. I believe we can help each other." Mark took a deep breath, still unsure. But as he looked at her again, something strange happened instead. Of feeling fear or suspicion, he felt calm. There was something about Lyra's presence that made everything feel okay, as if she was meant to be here with him. "Well, I can't say I'm not surprised," Mark said, forcing a smile. "I've been here for months with no company. I guess I can get used to this." Lyra smiled again, and this time, Mark could see the genuine happiness in her eyes. It wasn't just a smile of politeness, it was a smile of real joy. "I'm glad. I believe this will be the beginning of a very interesting journey for both of us." Mark couldn't help but feel a strange sense of hope rising inside him. This alien, this mysterious, glowing being was here to stay, and somehow that didn't seem so bad. As Lyra stepped closer, Mark realized that, for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone anymore. He had an alien companion, and to his surprise, she seemed truly happy to be here with him. The next few days with Lyra were strange, yet comforting. Mark had never imagined that he'd share his days with an alien, but here she was so different from everything he knew, yet so easy to be around. At first, Mark tried to keep a distance. He was still processing everything, how she had come from another world, how she had been sent to help him. He didn't fully understand why someone like her would want to spend time with a stranger like him, but every time he looked into her violet eyes, he felt an unexpected warmth. There was no hostility, no fear, just curiosity and kindness. Lyra was patient with him. She never rushed him or forced him to talk. They spent the first few days walking around the planet together, exploring the surroundings. Mark showed her the basics of how he had survived, how to find food, build a shelter, and make use of the resources the planet provided. It was clear that Lyra's species had advanced technology, but she seemed eager to learn the way humans had adapted to their environment. You humans are resourceful, she said one day as they sat by a small stream. You don't need much to survive. Mark laughed, shaking his head. Sometimes it feels like I need everything. I'm not exactly living the dream out here. Lyra smiled. But you are alive, and that is what matters most. Mark found himself liking her more and more. It wasn't just her knowledge or her calm presence, it was her way of looking at things. She didn't see problems the way humans did. She saw solutions. Even in the most difficult situations, she would point out things he never noticed, the way the leaves glistened after a rain, or the subtle shifts in the wind that meant a storm was coming. Every moment felt like a little adventure, and having her by his side made it feel less lonely. One evening, as they sat by a fire, Lyra asked Mark about Earth. She had learned a little about it from her people, but she wanted to know more from someone who had lived there. What is it like? She asked. Your home world. Mark paused, the question catching him off guard. He had been so focused on surviving on this alien world that he hadn't really thought about Earth. In a long time, the memories flooded back: his family, the bustling cities, the noise, and the warmth of human connection. It's busy, he said slowly. There's always something happening, people everywhere, moving fast. But it's not always a good thing. People are so caught up in their lives, they forget to stop and appreciate the little things. He looked at her like this, like sitting here with you, just talking. Lyra listened intently, her eyes full of understanding. Humans are complex, she said softly. You live with so much, yet sometimes you miss the things that matter most. Mark nodded. Yeah, sometimes it feels like we're all running after something, but we don't know what it is. Lyra's smile returned. Perhaps it's the simple moments that are most important. Mark thought about that as they continued to talk. Late into the night, he had never been one to open up easily, but with Lyra, it felt different. She didn't judge him, didn't question his past or his choices. She simply listened, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. They spent more time together, sharing stories of their lives. Lyra taught Mark some of her species' ways of thinking, explaining how they valued emotional connections and harmony. She spoke of her people's peaceful ways and how they had learned to avoid conflict. Mark, in return, shared his experiences on Earth, his family, his friends, his childhood memories. Mark found himself looking forward to each day with Lyra. There was something about her that made everything feel more alive. She didn't just teach him how to survive on the planet, she showed him how to appreciate the beauty in the world around him, whether it was a flower blooming in the wild or the way the stars lit up the night sky. Lyra made everything feel like a gift. One day, as they were walking through the woods, Mark found himself talking about something he hadn't even realized he cared about. He had always been a bit of a loner, but over time, he started to miss human connection. Not just the physical aspects of it, but the emotional bond. He had never truly understood how much he needed companionship until he had it again through Lyra. I never realized how much I took human connection for granted. Mark admitted as they walked side by side. Before you came here, I thought I could handle being alone forever. But now, it feels different, like I've been missing something all this time. Lyra nodded. Humans are not meant to be alone. You are social creatures. You thrive when you connect with others. Mark thought about that. It was true. He had spent so many years focusing on survival that he hadn't stopped to think about the emotional side of things. Now, with Lyra, he realized how much he had longed for meaningful connections. I guess we're more alike than I thought, Mark said, looking at her with a smile. Lyra met his gaze. Perhaps, but what matters is that we are here now, together. As Mark looked at her, he realized that she was right. They had formed a bond, one that neither of them had expected. In a world so vast and unknown, they had found each other. And somehow, that made everything feel possible. As the days turned into weeks, Mark became more comfortable with Lyra's presence. Their bond had grown deeper, and he started to look forward to their conversations. Lyra wasn't just a companion. She was a teacher, a listener, and sometimes even a mirror to his own thoughts. One day, as they sat by a fire, Lyra began to talk more about her people. She had shared little bits here and there, but Mark had always felt there was so much more to learn. He wanted to understand her culture, her way of thinking, and the peaceful life she spoke of. Tell me more about your people, Mark said, his curiosity getting the best of him. What's it like where you come from? Lyra looked up at the stars for a moment before answering. We come from a planet called Valoria. It is very different from Earth. There are no wars, no fighting. My people have learned to live in peace for many generations. Mark listened closely. This was unlike anything he had ever heard before. On Earth, there were always conflicts, struggles, and competition. People fought for resources, for power, for control. He couldn't imagine a world without such tension. How do you do it? Mark asked. How do you avoid conflict all the time? Lyra smiled softly. It is not easy. It took centuries for us to learn. We focus on understanding each other. Our people believe that the key to peace is not in control, but in connection. We communicate openly, share our feelings, and solve problems together without aggression. Mark thought about her words. It seemed like a simple idea, but he knew it must take a lot of effort and patience. So, you never have arguments, never get angry. We do, Lyra said, her voice calm. But we don't act on it the way many humans do. Instead of letting anger control us, we express it calmly and work together to find a solution. We have learned to understand our emotions instead of being ruled by them. Mark was amazed. He couldn't imagine a world where people didn't shout or argue when they were angry. On Earth, it felt like conflict was everywhere, from the smallest disagreements to the biggest wars. The idea of peaceful communication was foreign to him, but somehow, Lyra made it sound like a real possibility. But what if it doesn't work? Mark asked, what if the problem can't be solved by just talking? Lyra nodded, understanding his doubt. Sometimes, not everything can be fixed. But we believe that trying to understand each other is always the first step. Even when we cannot find a solution, we learn and grow from the experience, and that, in itself, brings us closer. Mark reflected on her words. He had never considered approaching problems in such a thoughtful way. It was so easy to get caught up in anger or frustration. But Lyra made him think about the power of listening and understanding. As they sat there, the night air cool and calm round them, Mark found himself feeling grateful for Lyra's wisdom. She had opened his eyes to a new way of thinking, a way that didn't rely on power or violence, but on kindness and cooperation. Your people seem amazing, Mark said, looking at Lyra with admiration. I wish more people on Earth could think like that. Lyra smiled. I believe that humans have the potential for peace too. It is not easy, but it is possible. Your species is capable of great things. You just need to learn to connect with each other. Mark thought about what she said. Could it really be possible for humans to live in peace? He didn't know. But he did know one thing. Lyra was showing him a side of humanity that he hadn't seen before. She was teaching him that peace wasn't just about avoiding conflict, it was about understanding, listening, and respecting each other's differences. Over the next few days, Mark started to pay more attention to the way he communicated. He tried to listen more carefully to Lyra, to really hear what she was saying without jumping to conclusions. He also made an effort to share his own thoughts and feelings with her, something he had never been good at. As their friendship continued to grow, Mark began to feel a change within himself. He wasn't as quick to judge or criticize. He found himself thinking before he spoke, taking the time to consider how his words might affect others. It was a small change, but it made a big difference in his interactions with Lyra and, surprisingly, with himself. One afternoon, as they sat by the river, Mark asked Lyra another question. "Do you think I could ever visit your planet? I mean, after everything you've taught me, I think I'd like to see where you come from." Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I would be honored if you could visit Valoria. Our world is full of beauty and peace. But I must warn you, it may be very different from Earth. You would need to adjust to the way we live." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of excitement building inside him. The idea of traveling to another planet, to see where Lyra came from, was thrilling. But more than that, it made him realize how much he had come to care about her. She had shown him a new way of thinking, a new way of living, and now he wanted to learn more. "I'd love to see it," he said. "Maybe one day." Lyra nodded. "One day, I hope. For now, we can continue learning from each other right here." Mark agreed. Even though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear: he wasn't alone anymore. With Lyra by his side, he had a friend, a teacher, and a companion who was opening his eyes to a world beyond what he had ever imagined. And for that, he would be forever grateful. The days with Lyra had been peaceful, but life on the alien planet was never without its challenges. Mark had learned to survive in this new world. But now, with Lyra by his side, the world felt different. It wasn't just about staying alive anymore, it was about learning to live in harmony with it. One morning, as they set out to gather food, the weather suddenly changed. The sky darkened quickly, and strong winds began to whip through the trees. Mark and Lyra hurried to find shelter, but the wind grew stronger, and the first drops of rain fell. "This storm came out of nowhere," Mark said, struggling to hear over the howling wind. "We need to get somewhere safe." Lyra nodded, her long arms outstretched as she tried to keep herself steady. "This is not an ordinary storm," she said calmly. "It's a phenomenon that happens on this planet. We must be careful." Mark didn't know how an alien could stay so calm in such a storm. He had seen plenty of bad weather on Earth, but nothing like this. The wind felt like it could knock them both over, and the rain was coming down in sheets. Lyra, however, seemed unbothered. She guided them through the thick woods, her steps steady, even though the wind was now pushing against them. "Where are we going?" Mark shouted over the noise of the storm. "Follow me," Lyra called back. "I know a place where we can take shelter." The two of them trudged through the rain, their clothes soaked through. But Lyra seemed to know exactly where to go. She moved with purpose, even as the storm raged around them. Eventually, they reached a large cave nestled beneath a cliff. Lyra stepped inside and motioned for Mark to follow. Inside the cave, it was dry and warm. Mark looked around, impressed. The cave was large enough for both of them to sit comfortably. He was grateful for the shelter, but he couldn't help but wonder how Lyra had known about this place. "How did you know this was here?" Mark asked, sitting down on a flat rock. Lyra sat across from him, her body glowing softly in the dim light of the cave. "This is one of the places my people have mapped," she explained. "We understand the weather patterns of this planet very well. We have lived with them for centuries." Mark nodded, still amazed. Lyra's calmness and confidence in the face of the storm made him feel small in comparison. "I guess I still have a lot to learn." "You are learning quickly," Lyra said, with a smile. "You are already adapting to this world in ways that most humans would not." Mark smiled back, feeling a sense of pride. He had never considered himself a survival expert, but with Lyra's help, he had learned how to survive on this planet. Yet, as he looked at her, He realized how much more he had to learn, not just about surviving, but about thriving. As the storm raged outside, the two of them spent the afternoon talking. Mark learned more about Lyra's people and their way of life. She explained that her species had lived in harmony with nature for centuries, and they had developed a deep understanding of the planets they inhabited. She spoke of how they worked with the land, not against it, and how they valued sustainability and balance. Mark found himself fascinated by her stories. He had never thought about the Earth in the same way before. The human race was so focused on progress, growth, and control that it had forgotten the importance of living in balance with nature. Lyra's people, on the other hand, had learned to respect their world, not to conquer it. As the storm finally began to calm, Mark felt a new sense of clarity. He had been so focused on surviving, on getting by day, that he had never stopped to think about how he could live better, how he could live with the world, not just in it. By the time the storm passed, Mark and Lyra were both tired but grateful for the shelter. They stepped outside, and the air was fresh, the ground glistening with rain. The clouds were breaking apart, and the sun began to peek through. "Thanks for showing me this place," Mark said, looking at Lyra with gratitude. "You really know how to take care of yourself out here." Lyra smiled. "It is not just about taking care of yourself. It is about taking care of the world around you. We are all connected, and we must remember that." Mark looked around at the lush landscape, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. For the first time, he truly understood what Lyra meant. He had been so focused on surviving in this world that he had never thought about his place in it. Now, as he stood beside Lyra, he saw the planet with new eyes. It wasn't just a place to survive, it was a world to respect and cherish together. They continued their journey, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Mark knew that there would be many challenges ahead, but with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face them. More than just surviving, he was beginning to understand what it meant to live. The peaceful days Mark had come to enjoy with Lyra didn't last long. Just as he had begun to adapt to his new life on the planet, things started to change. The quiet of the forest was broken by strange sounds one evening, and an unfamiliar ship appeared in the sky. Mark and Lyra were standing on a hilltop when the ship landed. Mark turned to Lyra, a sense of unease creeping over him. "Do you know what this is?" Lyra's face grew serious as she looked up at the ship. "This is not good. I have never seen a ship like this before. We need to be careful." Mark's heart raced. He had come to trust Lyra's judgment, and if she was worried, it meant they were in trouble. The ship slowly descended, its dark metal gleaming under the setting sun. It landed with a soft thud, sending up a cloud of dust. A hatch opened, and a group of tall, armored beings stepped out. They looked human, but their features were sharp and cold. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their armor shimmered with strange symbols that Mark couldn't understand. He could feel a tension in the air. These weren't friendly visitors. One of the aliens stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "We've been sent to collect the human," he said. His gaze fixed on Mark. "He is a specimen of interest." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "Specimen," he repeated. "What do you mean?" Lyra stepped between him and the aliens, her body glowing with a soft light. "You will not take him," she said firmly. "He is under my protection." The alien's eyes narrowed. "You have no say in the matter, alien. Our orders are clear. The human is to be studied." Mark looked at Lyra, confused and frightened. He had no idea what was happening, but it was clear that these aliens were not friendly. "Lyra, what's going on?" he whispered, his voice shaking. Lyra turned to him, her expression calm but determined. "These beings are not from this part of the galaxy. They are explorers, but they take what they want without considering the consequences. They have no respect for life." Mark stepped back, his mind racing. "So, what do we do?" "We fight," Lyra said quietly. "But we must be careful. They are strong and well prepared. We must use our minds, not just strength." Mark was taken aback. He had never been in a real fight before, and the thought of facing these armored aliens made him feel small and powerless. But Lyra's confidence gave him some strength. She had helped him survive before, and he trusted her now more than ever. Lyra stepped forward, her glowing body brightening as she spoke. I will negotiate with them. I will try to find a peaceful solution, but if they refuse, we will have no choice but to defend ourselves. The aliens didn't respond, but their leader's cold eyes locked onto Lyra. You are foolish to think you can stop us. We will take what we want. Mark felt his heart pounding in his chest as Lyra moved closer to the leader of the aliens. He knew she was trying to reach some kind of understanding, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. These beings were not like her people. They weren't interested in peace or understanding, they wanted control. The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Mark stood, unsure of what to do. He wanted to help, but he had no idea how to fight these creatures. Lyra had taught him a lot about survival, but nothing about how to face an enemy like this. Suddenly, the alien leader moved, his hand reaching for a weapon at his side. Lyra was quicker. She moved with the speed of light, knocking the weapon from his hand and sending it flying into the air. The other aliens rushed forward, but Lyra held them off with a powerful force field, her glowing body shimmering brightly. Mark watched in awe as Lyra used her abilities to protect them. It was clear that she was not just an ordinary alien, she was something far more powerful than he had ever imagined. But even with her strength, she couldn't keep up the shield forever. The aliens were relentless, and Mark could see the strain on Lyra's face as she focused all her energy on holding them back. He knew he couldn't just stand there. His heart was pounding in his chest as he looked around, trying to think of anything that could help. That's when he saw it. A large, sharp rock lay nearby, just out of reach. Without thinking, Mark rushed toward it, grabbing the rock and hurling it toward the nearest alien. It hit the alien's armor with a loud crash, momentarily distracting him. Lyra took advantage of the distraction, using her abilities to push the aliens back. Mark, get to the ship, she shouted. We need to leave before they bring reinforcements. Mark didn't hesitate. He ran toward the ship, his mind racing. He had never imagined that he would be running from an alien attack. But there was no time to think. He jumped into the ship, hoping Lyra would follow as the ship's edge closed behind him. Mark looked out the window at the aliens. They were still standing there, watching him. He couldn't tell if they were angry or just calculating their next move. Lyra, Mark said breathlessly. What now? Lyra stepped up beside him, her face serious but calm. Now we leave. But we will not stop fighting for peace. I will not let them harm you, Mark. You are my companion, and I will protect you. Mark felt a deep sense of gratitude and awe as he looked at Lyra. She was more than just an alien, she was his friend, his protector. And he knew now, more than ever, that together they could face whatever came their way. The ship zoomed through the sky, far away from the danger that had nearly captured them. Mark sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls, while Lyra sat beside him, her eyes scanning the stars outside the window. They had narrowly escaped, but Mark could still feel his heart racing from the encounter with the hostile aliens. It had been terrifying, and for the first time, he had truly understood how much danger they were in. Lyra, however, seemed calm. As always, her presence was steady and reassuring. But Mark could sense that something was different. There was something she wasn't telling him. Something important. The quiet between them was heavy, and Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed something crucial. Lyra, Mark began, his voice steady but full of curiosity. How did you know we were going to be attacked? You seemed prepared for it. Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes thoughtful. She had always been honest with him, but there were times when she didn't reveal everything. Now, Mark felt like it was time for her to share more about herself. You've been holding something back, haven't you? He asked. What aren't you telling me? Lyra took a deep breath, her expression softening. I have not been entirely truthful with you, Mark, she said, her voice calm but serious. There are things about my mission that you do not know, things that I could not share with you until now. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had always trusted Lyra, but this was different. The idea that she had been hiding something from him. especially after everything they had been through together, made him uneasy. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Mark asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's going on, Lyra?" Lyra looked out of the window, her expression distant. "When I was first sent here, my mission was not just to assist you, Mark. I was chosen because I possess certain abilities that are rare among my people. I was sent to observe humanity, to understand you better. But my true task was always to form a connection with you, one that could change the future." Mark blinked, struggling to understand. "Form a connection? What do you mean by that?" Lyra turned to face him, her eyes full of honesty. "You see, Mark, my species has been studying humans for a long time. We have observed your world, your wars, your struggles, and your potential. But what we did not expect was that I would form a bond with you, a bond that is deeper than anything I have ever experienced. I was not just sent to protect you. I was sent to connect with you, to understand humanity's potential through the connection we would share." Mark sat back in the pilot's seat, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always known that Lyra was different from anyone he had ever met, but now he understood that she was here for a much larger purpose than he had realized. "So, you weren't just helping me out of kindness," Mark said slowly. "You were part of some mission. You were sent to study humans." Lyra nodded. "Yes. But when I met you, everything changed. I did not expect to feel the way I do about you. I thought I could remain detached, focused on my mission. But the connection we have is not just part of my mission. It is real. I care for you, Mark, more than I have ever cared for anyone." Mark felt a wave of emotion, shock, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite place. He had always thought of Lyra as a companion, someone he could trust. But this revelation was much bigger than he had imagined. "So, what happens now?" Mark asked. "Are you going to leave when your mission is over?" Lyra shook her head, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what the future holds, Mark. The mission was never about an ending. It was about what we could learn from each other. I came here to observe humanity, but now I see that humans are not just something to study. You are worth connecting with, not just observing." Mark was silent for a long moment, trying to process everything Lyra had said. It was hard to imagine that the bond they had formed was part of some grand plan. But as he looked at Lyra, he knew that she wasn't just some alien sent to study him. She was someone who had become a friend, a protector, and someone who genuinely cared about him. "So, you're saying that our connection is real?" Mark asked quietly. Lyra's eyes softened. "Yes, Mark, it is real, and it has changed both of us. I came here to learn about humanity, but what I have learned is that connection is the most important thing. I feel things for you that I never expected to feel, and I believe that you feel the same." Mark nodded slowly, his mind swirling with emotions he hadn't fully understood. He had come to rely on Lyra, not just for her knowledge or protection, but for her presence. And now, hearing that their bond was real, that it meant something more than just survival, made him feel something deeper than he had expected. "So, what does this mean for us?" Mark asked. "Where do we go from here?" Lyra smiled gently, her eyes filled with warmth. "Wherever we go, Mark, we go together. Our bond is stronger than any mission, and no matter what happens, I will always be by your side." Mark felt a sense of peace wash over him. He didn't know what the future held, but with Lyra by his side, he knew he wasn't alone. Together, they had already faced challenges and survived, and together, they would face whatever came next. The stars above twinkled like distant fireflies as the ship cruised through the deep space. Mark sat in the cockpit, staring out at the vastness of the galaxy. Lyra stood beside him, her calm presence always a comforting reminder of the bond they had formed. The journey they had been on was far from over, but it had already changed them both in ways they couldn't yet understand. Mark glanced at Lyra, who was studying the star maps displayed on the ship's console. "Where are we headed next?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra turned her gaze toward him, her violet eyes reflecting the stars outside. "I've been thinking about that," she said, her voice soft but steady. "We've been through a lot together, Mark, And while I don't know what the future holds, I do know that we are stronger than we were before. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." Mark nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude toward her. He had come to depend on her not only for survival, but for her wisdom, her strength, and the way she had opened his eyes to a new way of living. Their bond had become something more than just a human and an alien companion. It had become a partnership, a friendship that transcended the stars. "We've faced a lot of danger," Mark said, thinking back on the recent events, the aliens who attacked us, the storms, the constant threat of being hunted. "I never imagined I would go through something like this." Lyra smiled gently, her voice filled with reassurance. "You have grown stronger through all of it, Mark. We both have. And while the road ahead may be uncertain, I believe we are ready for it together." Mark took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. There had been so many times when he had felt lost, unsure of what to do next. But Lyra had always been there. She had shown him that even in the most difficult times, there was a way forward. And now, as he looked out at the stars, he realized that their journey was far from over. It was just beginning. As the days passed, Mark and Lyra continued their travels, visiting strange planets and meeting new beings. Some were friendly, others less so, but each encounter helped them grow. Mark learned more about Lyra's species and the peaceful way they lived, and in turn, he shared the lessons he had learned on Earth, lessons about strength, courage, and the importance of connection. They spent their days exploring new worlds, taking in the beauty of the galaxies, and learning from each other. Lyra continued to teach Mark the importance of understanding, not just surviving. She showed him how to connect with the planets they visited, how to appreciate the life around them, and how to be in harmony with the universe. One day, as they landed on a quiet, forested planet, Mark turned to Lyra, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I've been thinking," he began, "about Earth, about how different it is from the places we've visited. We have so much fighting, so much division, and yet I've learned so much from you, from your people, about living in peace." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know that Earth is a world full of challenges, Mark, but that is why you and your people are important. You have the potential for great change. It is not easy, but every step toward peace is a step towards something better." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of hope that he had never known before. He had always thought of Earth as a place filled with conflict and struggle. But Lyra had shown him that there was more to life than that. There was hope, there was beauty, and most importantly, there was the possibility of change, I think. "I understand now," Mark said, his voice full of conviction. "I think I understand that we can make a difference, not just by fighting, but by connecting, by understanding each other." Lyra nodded, her face glowing with pride. "You have learned much, Mark, and you are not alone. There are others on Earth who share your vision, who want to create a better world. You will not have to face it alone." Mark felt a sense of peace settle in his heart. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living, about making the world a better place, one small step at a time, with Lyra by his side. He felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and no matter where their journey took them, he knew that together they could overcome anything. As they stood on the edge of the forest, looking out at the horizon, Mark felt a deep connection to the world around him, the stars above, the planet below, and the alien beside him. Everything felt right, as if they were exactly where they were meant to be. "Thank you, Lyra," Mark said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude, "for everything, for showing me that there's more to life than just surviving." Lyra smiled, her eyes soft with affection. "You have shown me as well, Mark. The universe is full of wonders, but it is the connections we make along the way that truly matter." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the planet, Mark knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more adventures, and more lessons to learn. But whatever came next, he knew that with Lyra by his side, he would always have a reason to keep moving forward together. They were ready for whatever the future held.